Hello and welcome to Buying and Beyond, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of retail buying. We're Kate and Linz, and together we have over 30 years experience in retail.
We'll be talking all things retail buying and beyond, so grab your drink of choice and come and have a giggle with us.
Morning.
Morning!
Got a nice hot cup of tea here.
Have you? I've gone for a orange and tonic water combination.
Oh, zesty.
I know.
Nice and fresh. Nice and fresh.
Non-alcoholic cocktail.
Oh, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Not just like a soft drink. It's a non-alcoholic cocktail. That's brilliant. So this week, we're going to continue our theme of conversations around moving on to pastures new. That's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? Pastures new. How to handle things when it all gets a little bit too much, and also the reality of retail, but more from a personal point of view than from a business trading view. So whereas a couple of episodes ago, we really talked about like what it's like working in retail at the moment, and we talked about how businesses have changed.
Yeah.
This is kind of more about like the personal impact of it, because it can often be as a result of the business trading that can like send us into an absolute stress.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a lot of tension behind the scenes when that happens. But then equally at the same time, when something exciting happens, there's a massive buzz in the office. So yeah, I think
you just feed off it, don't you? It goes hand in hand. Like
what's the word? It's so it breathes, doesn't it? It's so
through osmosis. Is it osmosis?
Osmosis.
That's testing our biology knowledge, isn't it?
I was never very good at biology at school.
Oh, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't one of my strengths.
I wasn't into the sciences. Yeah.
But it is. It can have like a real direct impact how a business is trading on how you then feel. Like it's quite hard when times are tough to keep bouncing back and being that positive person. Like, you know, it can be really difficult to like sometimes some businesses can understand that, you know, mistakes are made and we learn from them, you know. And actually, one business I worked for was really good at, you know, take a risk and fail fast. Like they were more than happy for you to like give it a go, as long as you had like a good reasoning behind why you wanted to try something. They were more than happy for you to try. And if it worked, brilliant. But if it didn't, it wasn't like, you know, it didn't matter if something completely bombed. It wasn't like you were there standing trying to explain yourself and it was a real problem and what you know, and you felt really uncomfortable standing in trade having to like defend this decision you made. It was, it didn't work, but our learnings from that are, and I really liked that. It was a real like had like a real like growth mindset, that company.
That's nice. That's nice. But equally, there are those times where you do have to go in and say, look, range this product, it's not selling through like we thought it would. And these are the things that we're going to try to get through it. But ultimately, it's not going to hit forecast. It's never going to hit forecast. It's never going to do what we said it was. And it's just dealing with the fallout of that, because you do feel, I don't want to say you feel like a failure, but you feel like
you can feel really responsible, can't you? Like you've been in a sign off and you are so loving this product. Like this product is the best thing you have ever seen, and no one else in the room's really loving it, but you are so for it. And we've talked about sign off meetings before, haven't we? When you've pulled together a product range, you're so passionate about it and you live and breathe it, and it's your theatre, it's your stage, it's your opportunity to really like push something forward. And if you're really feeling for it, you know, this is your time. You're supposed to be the influencer. You need to get everybody on board. But if there's like a standout product that everyone else has been like, just don't think it will work. And you're like, no, guys, trust me on this one. I got it. I've got this. And then it absolutely bombs. And then you have to go into trade like, well, I just, wrong color, maybe. I don't know. You then suddenly feel like you're the sole reason that that business is going to go under, which
Yeah.
like is dramatic. But when you're in that headspace, you feel like solely responsible that you are the reason that nothing, like that no one's going to get bonus. I
Yeah,
mean, who gets
exactly.
bonus these days anyway?
Especially when you're not used to the trade environment. I think when you first go in and you have to deal with those issues, that's a real learning curve, isn't it? And that's where it's really important to have the backing of your boss above you before you go in. I think, just helping you like understand and give you that support and throw in those suggestions to help you get through the difficult
Mm.
silence tumbleweed from potentially the CEO going, well, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. God. I remember you once described it, I think, as a lion's den of a trading meeting. Like you're literally being fed to the lions and like you've got to, or it's kind of like a sink or swim type thing, which doesn't work with the lion analogy, but you know what I mean. I'm throwing them all out there. But
Mm-hmm.
you can feel really, really overwhelmed. Like, God, the Sunday night fear.
Oh, the Sunday night fear. Again, I think we've talked about Sunday night fear before, but the Sunday night fear. I mean, does any other business have that? I think not. Like, I think it's
No.
such a common thing in our industry.
Yeah, I don't know of any other business where, or I don't have any other friends that don't work in retail that are so stressed about a Monday.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
again, I think you're right. We talked about the pub sessions and stuff, like you can't actually stomach your roast because you're feeling so uncomfortable about the Monday.
Yeah.
But, but everyone else is just like, yeah, it's Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. And you're like, oh, they're like, oh, but Fridays. And you're like, no, none of that.
I think the only thing that ever made me feel better was just like maybe having a quick glance at the sales, although this could go the other way, on a Sunday and just be like if it had been a good week, then you just feel a little bit more, you feel like excited to go in on a Monday. But if
Yeah.
it's a terrible week, you're like, oh
It
God.
just exacerbates it. I do remember you used to message me on like a weekend being like, oh, sales are looking good. And I'd be like, oh, I have no idea what my sales are looking like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You wouldn't do it, would you?
I was a
No.
classic, just switch off at 5 p.m. on a Friday.
Yeah.
And then
Log back in
yeah,
on.
then restart on a Monday. To be
Mhm.
fair, very early on a Monday. Like I would get in early on the Monday to see what was going on. But for those weekends, definitely I would step it back. But I could see method in your madness,
Mhm. Mhm.
particularly if sales were good. Like instead of spending the weekend thinking, oh good God, actually, if you had a good weekend and it really turned your sales around, then it could make you sleep a lot better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It can be tough. And it's not even just at buyer level, like it starts from like before that as well. Like, I remember as a BAA and AB, like feeling really overwhelmed and stressed, but less of a less because of the well, I was gonna say less of the responsibility on my head. There was responsibility. Like it was generally a workload point of view, but it would be like the number of orders that I needed to get on the system. But that in itself, I remember, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I do remember a senior buyer coming over when I was a BAA and I hadn't got a product composition form for one of the orders. I'd been chasing and chasing. I hadn't thought to raise it up to anybody. Like it was sat in my tray. I knew I needed to get through it, but I had loads of other orders where they did have all the information I needed to raise the order. So I was just churning them out. And this one I was like, kept chasing, but nothing was coming through, kept working on it. And it must have been a good month because time passes fast when you're having fun or data inputting. And it came to light that it wasn't on the system yet. And I got such a bollocking
Oh
for
no.
just leaving it and not telling them. And I was like, it wasn't like I hadn't been working. It wasn't like I'd just left it. Like I'd been constantly chasing up, but I hadn't raised it up. And I remember feeling so, so, so sick. Like the level of admin at that point
Yeah.
could be so overwhelming. And that in itself feels stressful.
Yeah, I think like just the small little things is that, tip you over the edge, and the amount of tears and like,
Yeah.
it's just,
Especially if your to-do list is never ending, like that can be really hard. Like you can be at a point as a buyer or a head of buying or a senior buyer or, and you've got really big responsibility and that can feel stressful. But your to-do list could be quite small of really big tasks.
yeah.
Like next week, I have to range build and I have to negotiate and I have to have one-to-ones. And those are my three main things. Whereas as a BA, I need to raise this order and I need to tidy this jewelry room and I need to get the post and I need to send that invoice and I need to pack those
A little
envelopes.
bit.
I need lots of bitty bits, but that in itself is overwhelming when you just see this ginormous list and you're just like, I can't see the wood for the trees. Where do I start?
Yeah, like the common thing I think when new BMA start, they always ask like, how do you manage your emails, and how do you know what's priority, and
Mm.
how do you just like not get overwhelmed? And I
Yeah.
always say to them, you are gonna get overwhelmed, but it's just how you deal with it, and you just need to make sure that you're constantly checking in and asking for someone to reprioritize your list when you first start, because you don't know. And I think a lot of them put so much pressure on themselves to not be constantly asking and constantly going to the managers and saying how do I prioritize this, but they would much rather you did than let everything fall over and not know that you're feeling completely overwhelmed and stressed
And
with
have
it.
an order sitting there for a month.
Exactly. That's
So you
that's
have raised. I mean, that slipped right off the critical path, didn't it? That was not going to launch on time.
oh God, mate. What are you learning?
But you live and learn from these mistakes, right? You live and learn. I always remember there were people that would have be able to get their inbox right down to like nothing. I don't think there was anyone ever in buying could ever get it down. I remember always feeling happy if I could fit my emails onto a screen.
Green, I
I
remember
didn't have to
that.
scroll.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that
yeah.
would be, you would make them as skinny as possible. You can see different formats of emails, you make them as skinny as possible. And
Mhm.
then, and then you'd have them. And I love
Change
a
font size.
change of font size. Yeah, make everything as small as possible so it can fit. So it just looks all on. And I'm a big lover of color coding, like to the point where I think, I mean, I love it. I can see it, I understand it, but I know my husband's just like, your spreadsheet doesn't make sense. Oh, it does. It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of information on there. I appreciate that. I'm used to working with big lots of data.
Is that, yeah? You tell him.
But it can be hard to know how to like arrange your inbox and how to kind of, even once you know how to prioritize, how do you prioritize within your inbox? Because there's only certain, because it's a computer. Because it's a computer, there's only a certain way you can do it. It's not like writing it out. So do you do it by category, or do you do it by flag, or do you do it by unread or read?
Oh, I hate that. My system is inbox, emails, loads of folders down the side. When I've answered that email, it goes into a folder, and then
Now,
I can't be dealing with flagging and colouring and da, 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 da.
see, I'm all over the colouring. Like, I'd have something, all the ones flagged in, categorized in blue. Like, not those flags, not those
I
red
don't
colour
have
flags.
time
I
for
can't
this.
get
Where
them.
do you get the time for this?
Well, you just read it and you'd be like, that category is a PO. So then I would then filter it by category. So then all of these would be POs. All of these would be sign off things I need to do. All of these would be negotiations I need to do. And then I'd segment my day up and be like, right, I'm going to do an hour on POs. Right, boom, boom, boom. What do I need to do? Those emails gone. But the thing with folders is, what do you do when it is a press email
Mhm.
from a supplier? Do you file it in supplier? Do you file it in press?
Well, I would file it in supplier, because if it's from the supplier about a press sample, it's from the supplier. My press folder would be purely liaising with the press team.
Interesting. What if it was predominantly the press team, but then suddenly oh God, I'm going off a tangent. Scrap this.
No, go for
It's
it.
getting really boring. Listen to our podcast on email organization. Anyway,
Highlights
back
our
to being,
organizational brains,
yeah, how the mind works. But
And
back
that is one of the
to,
main things that you need, main skills. That's one of the main skills that you need to handle stress in buying, is to be organized.
To understand your emails. So maybe an entire episode just on email etiquette is the right thing to do.
Please vote now.
But anyway, back to stress.
Yeah.
I love this very upbeat conversation about stress. I'm going to keep it upbeat though, because I remember we used to call it stressy fats.
Stressy fat.
Yeah, we got really stressed out. We had loads to do and we just get stressy fats. And basically, and I still do this to this day actually, but it's that feeling where you're so overwhelmed, you just want to eat. It's a bit like comfort eating. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I used to wish sometimes that instead of being like a comfort eater, I was someone that was like, oh, I'm too stressed, I can't eat. But like that's
I'm sorry, that's
me.
me.
That's
Don't
not me.
hate, but that
To
is
be,
me.
I think to be fair though, it does work. It depends type of stress. I don't know about you, type of stress. Like a
True.
breakup, I'd be
Mhm.
so sick I couldn't eat. Like I'd
Mhm.
be so upset, heartbroken,
Yeah.
heartbreak diet.
Yeah.
But too much work, I need food. I don't know if is it fuel to keep you going? Is it that your body's like
Or
goes
is
into
it
drive?
is it procrastination? So I'm a great
Or is it
I
procrastination?
am so bad at this. I might have so much to do, but I'll just go make a cup of tea and I'll just get a biscuit.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. See,
Mm.
I feel like mine is I load up on all my food because I know I've got a lot to do and I just park it next to me. It's not procrastination. It's like task, stuffing it in my mouth, task, stuffing it in my mouth. I don't know. I think maybe it's my body's going into like not hibernation season, but do you know what I mean? It's like
Hibernation season
it's
in the
fueling me.
summer.
It's
in
fueling me.
month of
It's
August.
thinking she's got a lot to do. She's going to need energy. And
Yeah.
how is she going to get her energy? Through eating biscuits.
Exactly, exactly. But also another way of combating it, especially when you're a lot more junior, is just making sure you have those friends, that you have that support network, you have those people you can pull for a coffee, you have, and even right up to the last post I was in at that level, I still had those trauma friends, that were heads of, that maybe were heads of a different departments. You could still pull and go, things are a bit stressful at the moment, and we've got time for a quick chat. And they just like are worth their weight in gold, and
Mhm.
really set your brain on a different track and help you to like just sort of take a moment to breathe and sit back and like work out how you're going to tackle this. Because there's
Yeah,
no
when your mind's spiraling and it's just spiraling out of control and you've got your own narrative in your head. If you just sit there and you're stressing about something and it just goes round and round and it just gets bigger and bigger. Just imagine like a little swirl and you start really small and you're getting bigger and you're like this swirly swirl and this big getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you have this huge swirl going around your mind of this stress. Whereas if you're going to speak to somebody about it, they just cap it, stop it.
They do, and they always repeat it back to you, and it doesn't sound as bad,
Yes,
you know.
that's so true.
Or just like making it so big in your head, and they're
In
just
your own head.
repeating it back to you, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm being ridiculous. Right, move on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's important to spot those signs, isn't it, of spiraling?
It is. It is.
Because it can be easier said than done to pull yourself out, but definitely go and speak to somebody about it. And sometimes you think that you're being silly, and other people are like, no, totally get that.
Mhm, mhm. For sure, for sure. Especially when you're responsible. I think especially when you're responsible for a lot of people, you're taking a lot of their weight on your shoulders too, and you not only got the pressure of performing as a business, but you've also got the pressure of making sure that those people are okay and their workload is manageable and they're not going to spiral.
Mm,
It's a real balancing act once you get further up. Just
yeah.
we've been quite light-hearted on this podcast and conversation so far, and I think there's a lot of sort of funny stories that we can talk about with stress. But obviously, it is a serious thing. It can make you really, really ill. It can, come out in all different sorts of ways, from diet, skin, all the rest of it. And I
Yeah.
think it's really, like Kate said, really, really important to make sure you're aware of the signs and that you don't let it get on top of you, because at the end of the day, as we always say, we are not saving lives.
Yeah, definitely. And noticing those signs and not noticing those si- and noticing those signs, and instead of throwing yourself into it and working 24/7 to try and compensate for it, because let's face it, like that's that's not going to help anybody, is it? Really, you're no good to anybody if you're working all evenings and all weekends. Like you'll be putting in the hours, but your output is definitely going to be lower because you're not going to be able to think clearly. Like it's important to switch off for the weekends. Like we mentioned just earlier about like checking in on sales, like that's one thing. But if that then goes from just checking on sales to then, oh God, I've just seen an email from my boss. Oh God, they're going to want me to do this next week. Like, no, 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 like no, that to then start responding to that email or starting to do that work like that, that's just too much. Like I honestly don't know how I flipped the switch, because I know so many people that can just get caught up with it. Like I'll just do an extra hour and another hour, or I just take my, particularly now, because you can work from home. It's a lot more, you don't leave your computer behind. You can take your laptop home with you.
Yeah.
People that will. And, on the one hand, it's great for having a bit more of a flexible work for those people that maybe need it. You've been to the dentist, you might then need to put in a bit of extra work in the evening. Or say you've got a family, you've got juggling appointments or children or whatever, then it's great that you can, but it's really important to still be quite strict with the time that you do. And if you've been working a full day, you don't need to go into the evening. Or if you do, make sure you take that time back,
Yeah,
you
for
know.
sure.
And I know we talked about to-do lists and how overwhelming they can be, but as you said, organization is essential. And I have to say, because I switch off on a Friday, I don't think about it all weekend. When I go back in on Monday, I'd often have little to no recollection of the previous week. I can't believe I'm admitting that. But so what I would make sure I would do is write a list on a Friday. And then when I get in on the Monday morning, have a read through of it, do my sales. New week, fresh start. But these are things I'm going to need to continue doing. And it was just a quick refresher. 4-day week. Thoughts?
Big fan. Big fan.
Less days. Big fan. 3-day weekend. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so much research on this, hasn't it? Hasn't there? Been,
Mhm.
to show how more productive people are working.
Yeah, and there's been quite a few companies that have trialed it, haven't they? And actually had really positive outcomes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for it, isn't there? Because surely it's better to have a productive workforce for less time in the week than an unproductive workforce for more time in the week, because
Definitely.
I'm ultimately going to get more out of them.
Hmm. Yeah, if someone feels energized, they've managed to do some exercise. Because let's face it, if you're attached to your desk for most of the day, like there's no time around that to do any kind of exercise. And it's been proven to, improve your um productivity and your emotional state and your general health and well-being. There's so much more around that, and how getting out is so important. Like it is not it's not admirable or commendable to be sat at your desk working through your lunch, and then if you've come in early and you're staying late.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
That
we
said,
know that there's like busy times in the calendar where you do need to do that. We're not being completely unrealistic here, saying everybody should just work 9 till 5 and, skip off into the sunset. There's obviously periods of time where you do need to put in the extra hours, and ultimately you're paid to do a job and you need to get it done.
yeah.
So it's up to you how you structure that, but giving people more time to have a rest and have those well-being activities that they can do, as long as they're doing them, I don't see the problem in it. I mean, I guess you just need a really, really good way of monitoring that that you are getting that effective workforce.
Yeah, it's about monitoring the output. I mean, it could even be things like we talk about like personal development, but about PDRs and how regular they are. But also at the moment, they just feel like a box ticking exercise. But actually, if they were more of a kind of a monthly, what are you going to achieve this month and what have you achieved? At one of my companies, I think I've talked about it before, we did monthly check-ins. So we would set OKRs, which are a bit like KPIs. What are you planning to do? And how are you going to achieve it? And then we would have monthly check-ins with the C-suite to let them know our progress on those particular um, objectives.
Mhm.
Now, that was quite difficult in one respect because we were a trading team versus an IT team or a marketing team or a product team. So day in, day out, we are trading, trying to list a range, negotiating. You're doing all of your buying work, plus also doing these stretch objectives almost.
Yeah.
Whereas the other teams were more used to working on project basis, whereas ours is just continuous. Keep it going. You're just keeping the ship afloat.
Mhm.
Whereas they are trying new concepts and ideas and testing and that. So it was quite difficult, but I really liked the setting the goal and the accountability and the check-in that each month you would let them know where you were
Mhm.
with that, because that does account for your productivity. And it
Yeah.
didn't matter what hours we worked in that month to get it done, but we had to get it done within that month. Um,
I suppose where it gets a bit sketchy is when a company's putting a task on you that takes much, much longer than they have allowed that time for it to take, basically. And they're expecting far too much out of one person, which happens
all the time.
everywhere. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think there's that onus on before people move to a 4 day week, really working out, are people able to do their job right now in the time they've got? Because, like you said, a lot of people are taking working into the weekend, working long hours, and you get used to that time as well to do your job.
Mhm.
Like I remember, working for a company, and I'd just taken on a new product category. I didn't have much admin support or buyer support, but I really wanted to prove myself. I really wanted to get on and I really wanted to turn the department around. So I would work so many extra hours. But at the end of the day, it meant that was burnt out. I burnt out and, I wasn't productive for the next few months. So I might have been quite productive for 6 months, but I wasn't productive for two. So it's just, I think there is that onus on monitoring how long things should take for people and what's the realistic amount of time.
Yeah. I guess it's like you say, it's the additional tasks. Because if you really drilled down to like core parts of buying, your check-ins would be your critical path, your product review. Are you ready for your sign off? Like those are your check-in points. And again, it shouldn't matter how you get to that point, as long as you can deliver in those meetings. If you can't deliver in those meetings, but there are lots of like external factors that can impact on that. Like just because you don't have all the samples doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't work hard enough to get them out, but actually the factory didn't send them to you in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But sometimes a bit of stress can be quite good. It can fire you up, get you going, give you a bit of sense of urgency, need to get shit done, get the adrenaline pumping. But it's just having that
Get
balance.
done.
Get shit
Yeah,
done.
a bit of pressure on you can be a really good thing. It can really motivate you. If you had and so many people as well are last minuters. Let's face it, like probably 70% of people are last minuters, I would say, because often there is never an end. Like you can always do more on a task.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of people, and right back to you think about uni days and things, you've got an assignment that needs to be due in by Christmas and it's August. Are you going to start it in August?
Yeah.
Like depending on how big it is, but many people will be like, oh, it's not due till Christmas, so it's fine. I'll start it in November.
Yeah.
Oh
You're
gosh, actually I'll
hoping
start in December.
to start it that far out, are you?
No, but then you don't know what's coming down the line. You don't know what you're going to have on your plate when you get there. So you really should start working on a task as soon as you kind of get it through. But definitely getting that adrenaline pumping, work through the night, get it done. Don't work through the night. We're just talking about
We just
shouldn't be working through the night. And I had a a flashback to university days and the all-nighters you'd pull
yeah, I suppose that did stand you in good stead for
for
real.
working and buying.
Yeah, but I think what we're trying to say is that, you know, stress can be good and it can be incredibly damaging. It's that about the having that balance and knowing your triggers and not allowing yourself too much extra time to get a job done because you cannot go backwards and then get that job done in a short space of time because you pushed yourself too far and you've allowed yourself to have those extra hours and you're going to burn out and it's just not productive.
Mm, hmm Preparation is key.
Preparation is
And
key.
I do agree that adrenaline is important to be able to fire you up in a really positive way and motivate you and excite you.
Mm.
But what do you do when it all goes too far and you feel like you can't come back? Like, what do you do? Like, I don't know the stats, but I know so many people over the years that have had to be signed off for stress from
Yeah.
work. And they're good people too, you know? It's not about not being able to hack it. Like, it's about genuinely there is too much going on here and people are at breaking point.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple reasons for why people get signed off. You know, it's it could be personal reasons as well, and it could be that they're doing too much themselves. They're micromanaging. They're not delegating well enough. Like, there's so many reasons why people get signed off, and you're right. In this world that we're in, the fallout after COVID is that a lot of businesses have had to what's the word sort of sharpen up or what I'm trying to say. What's the word? They've had to downsize. They've had to let a lot of people go, so there's less people to do the work, and there's so much more
Mm,
pressure on people
pressure.
now to keep that business going. And again, we're not sitting here saying that you shouldn't do that to keep that business going because ultimately that might be your role and your responsibility, but you can't do that from being signed off sick.
Mm.
Got to really, really push back on your business and say, this is not working. This is not sustainable. The next person's going to come in and then they're going to burn out. It's just not a workable solution. How do we
Yeah,
work
especially
together to get through
yeah.
this?
Yeah, and especially in the long run, you're saving money here, but actually you're not going to be able to deliver. So you're not going to get those results.
Mhm.
If you've got expected growth plans, reducing your workforce is really going to hamper that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're realists here as well. Some businesses have to do that to survive. They have to let people go, but then they have to reorganize how things are done.
Yeah, and there's a way in which you go about doing that, the consultancy period and things like that. And you know, and how you treat people. And just remember that they are people, not numbers. So often companies, I think, particularly if they're struggling or they're trying to find a way to make things work and make sure that their business still floats, it's very easy to forget that people are people with feelings and just see them as numbers and roles and what do I need in my structure. Um, yeah, and I think we've talked before about the importance of investing in people. I heard a really great rewording of KPIs that has stayed with me. And it's not just used for performance indicators, but as a manager or as a business owner, it's also keep people interested or keep people informed or keep people involved and keep people inspired.
Oh,
Like I really love that
need to have that on a poster and stuck up around the office.
on a mug.
Keep people
It
involved,
every single day.
keep people involved, keep people interested, and keep people inspired.
Mm.
Love it.
Magic.
Come on, big businesses out there. invest in your people.
Yeah. It's probably time to bring this to a close. I mean, you know what we're like, we can chat a lot, but it's probably time to bring this to a close because it's been quite an intense subject, but one that we've had quite a few requests for us to discuss. So I really hope we did it justice. Um, Probably rambled quite a bit, but I hope people can feel that you're not alone and everybody goes through it in one way or another. And there's so many different ways and tools out there for dealing with stress and burnout. And I think there's so much more that can be talked about when it comes to stress and burnout and sharing coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I think it's also making sure that people understand and talk about it. Talk about it because everybody's going through exactly the same thing. They might just be internalizing it. The key is to just talk about it. Don't be afraid to look vulnerable, because it's just gonna have such a devastating impact on you. Don't be afraid that you might then unlock something from someone else. You might, help them as well as helping you because they might be internalizing exactly the same thing. So I think definitely sharing and talking and verbalizing and not being afraid to say this is too much goes a long way.
Agreed. Very much agreed. So our three takeaways from this episode: one, work-life balance is important. There is so much talk about whether or not this should actually even be a phrase, work-life balance. People think that if you love what you do, you shouldn't need to balance work versus life because work is life, without sounding too hippy-dippy. But we believe, like everything in life, you do need balance. But maybe we need to rephrase it to like work personal balance because like that's what is important, like making sure that you've got time just to be you. Because let's face it, often you do have different work and personal personas, which you kind of have to be in order to be in a professional environment, and then you just let loose on the weekends. Or you could call it work hobby balance. I hate the word hobby, but it's about doing those like extracurricular. I also hate that word, extracurricular, but extracurricular activities, for want of a better word. But it is about making sure that work isn't all consuming, even if you love it. Like, don't let that be your only passion in life.
Absolutely. Number two, if you feel overwhelmed, take a step back or step away from the situation. Get some space to clear your head. Go to the tea point to let off steam, excuse the pun, or pop out for some fresh air. And number three, seek out support. Build a network of trust. Find the ones you can offload to, but also give you another perspective and rein in your stressful thoughts.
So hopefully we're all leaving today's episode feeling a little less stressed, or at least feeling like we know how we can cope if everything gets a little bit too much, and knowing that we're not alone and there's lots of people going through this. Next week and the following week, we've got two really great episodes coming up. Some really great guests that are going to be joining us to give us some really wise words. Following on from stress, life coaching. How important is life coaching? How great is life coaching? This is going to be Lindsay's favorite episode.
Yeah,
and also some advice on recruitment in retail. So if you're feeling like you're burning out and you just want to get out, then what do you do? Where do you look to? See you then.
See you later.
If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please, please, please like and subscribe and leave a review. And if you already have, thank you, thank you, thank you. We all need a bit of retail therapy, and this is the perfect time for you to offload about that super cringeworthy story. We would love to hear from you all, your funny stories and experiences, or even any dilemmas. And maybe we can help, or at least find someone who can. And don't worry, we will keep these anonymous and remove any names and brands.
We would also love to hear from you on any topics you would like us to talk about. Please send all of these into buyingandbeyond@gmail.com or drop us a DM via our Instagram page @buyingandbeyond. Kate, are you a drama queen?
No,
Drama just makes things interesting.
that's true.
All these thoughts and opinions are our own and based on our own experiences working for a wide variety of retailers. These are all in the hope to entertain and educate, and not to reflect negatively on any place we currently or have previously worked.